The world suddenly plunged into a freezing ice age. Outside, the air is frozen hard to minus 60 degrees, making warmth and food the most precious things in South Korea's icy city. The survivors tried to stay together at first, but soon they saw there just wasn't enough food for all of them. And then, a true war erupted in the freezing hallways of the apartment blocks. In the middle of all that madness, there's a fearless guy named Hang Fong hanging out in his safe haven, surrounded by heat, girls, and tons of food. He travels back in time before the world ends to get ready, and he even grows superpowers that let him copy food and make it huge. He didn't stop there and later built himself a real fortified base with heat, greenhouses, and even a sauna. So how did it all begin? Let's find out. The engine dies and is instantly drowned out by the loud shout of someone calling for Hanfong. The guy shivers from the cold as he trudges toward the door to open it. Peering through the opening, he finds his crush, Hyona, shivering in the cold and too weak to speak. He swings the door open without a second thought to check if she's okay and immediately pulls her inside. Suddenly, Hona jumps up to kiss him, leaving Hanfong completely shocked and amazed. She pours her heart into that kiss until he's totally speechless, realizing that the girl he only dreamed about is finally his, making him feel like a champion for the first time. Right here, Hona finally admits she's always loved him. After falling deep into a scary world where everything is ending, she finally realizes that a guy like him actually looks out for everyone. To prove her point, Hona presses his hand against her body so he can feel her racing heart, showing him she's ready to do anything with him. And there it is, the honey trap he falls for, because while he's daydreaming about romance, Hyona rubs her thigh against his legs, making him lose his cool and forget his own heart. He responds by saying that even though she means the world to him, they just can't act this way right now. Hyona is a master of manipulation, tricking our boy into closing his eyes so he can fully enjoy the experience. With a heart full of joy, he closes his eyes, wondering what comes next while feeling the pure excitement of a child. But then, right after he gets the girl's first kiss, her angry boyfriend crashes into his face with his hard skull. A massive blow to his head leaves him lying in a pool of blood, shivering in agony as Hyona screams in horror at the cold-blooded murder, only for her boyfriend to snap that they knew this had to happen all along since no one survives the apocalypse without taking what they need, and right now, he and Hyona are too busy celebrating their new stash of loot to even care about the dying man. The kind man who tried to help is now dying in a pool of blood, unable to move as he watches Hyona celebrate with her lover, only to realize his death was planned by a ruthless woman. So in his final breath, he swears that if he gets another chance, he will never be used and thrown away again. And as he fades away, a warm, shimmering light pulls him close, making him think he is finally entering heaven. But then his hopeful dreams fade as his spirit feels deep pain and shatters into 100 pieces. By the time that nightmare finally ends, he jolts awake from his bed. His face is drenched in sweat as he looks around, confused by everything he sees. Hanfong was fading away just seconds ago, but now he's okay again. It wasn't just that he was okay. The whole world was calm with no sign of the end coming. Even after waiting half an hour, the sun still feels warm, a kind of heat he never thought he'd feel again. Hanfong checked the calendar and saw that today was June 28th, but the world-ending event in the original story doesn't happen until July 15th. This means he somehow traveled back just weeks before the end of the world, and the shock and wonder on his face show he wasn't expecting to come back this way, especially with that glowing red hand that hasn't stopped shining since he woke up. He waves it off, but nothing changes, and the warm glow feels harmless until Hanfong sneezes, turning his hand bright green and swelling with power he can't control. He stands there in a panic, completely lost and overwhelmed by this new problem. The strange light that suddenly appeared in his hand begins to shrink, glowing in a way that feels very different from the red light. As he sat down, he confessed how much weaker he felt ever since the green one turned on. Frustrated and waving his hand in anger, Hanfong suddenly realizes he is living out the exact overpowered rebirth story he used to love reading. So, to test his own, Bro pulls out a knife and prays for a miracle, but nothing works, and he just stands there looking like a total clown. And don't forget, his tummy is growling from losing all that energy. He opens his fridge to find it completely empty, and as the problem grows worse than he expected, he knows he must eat something or risk passing out again. As he spots a jar of roasted soybeans, an idea suddenly pops into his head. The only snacks that could be used in the apocalypse are filling enough to get you through, even if they aren't a proper meal. He grabs a bean, pops it into his mouth, and suddenly it explodes into a fully grown plant right there. As his green hand faded into light, the heavy tiredness vanished right along with it. Hanfang can't tell if the problem came from the soybeans or something he did. He snatches and pops open a bean sprout, shocked to find it's his brand new power. Hanfang is so impressed by it that he wants to learn how to use it, but since he's not at his best, he needs to handle two things right now. First, gathering enough supplies so he doesn't run out when the apocalypse hits. He heads straight to the supermarket. Next, he weaves through a noisy, distracted crowd while trying to make sense of his two glowing hands. The unstable green one makes him tired, but the final, most mysterious power lets him instantly turn soybeans into sprouts just by touching them. He still doesn't know exactly what his power can do, and that makes him so frustrated. As he's deep in thought, a familiar voice suddenly rings in his ears. The woman who betrayed him in a past life has returned to stand before him. She's absolutely stunning, but getting involved with her will literally drag you 6 feet under, leaving Hanfang shocked to run into her again in this state. Lee Hyona has been his secret crush for 3 straight years. He tried every possible trick to win her heart, yet deep down our boy knew he was just a backup plan. Now, after she lied and got him killed for real, he's furious, but since he's back from the dead, he knows better than to just blow up at everyone. Hanfang steadies himself, deciding to save his revenge for another day while he grabs the supplies he needs now. Hyona waves her hand to snap the guy out of his daze and show she cares. He tried his hardest to stay polite while complimenting Hyona on her beauty, which had actually stunned him for a moment. She calls him a smooth talker and sees his words as the perfect chance to invite him out for some shopping. Even with her effort, the girl is flatly turned down as he walks past Hyona, acting like she doesn't even exist. This hit her so hard with reality that she couldn't say a word. Hanfang knows she's only inviting him around so she can use him to buy her groceries, but he's done being treated like a pet and won't let that happen again. Everyone in the region knows that the Waldemar Shopping Plaza is the best supermarket around. In the original timeline, the Arctic apocalypse started and this place was cleaned out and emptied in just one night, though no one knows who did it. So now Hanfang's goal is to stock up on as much as he can by using a survival guide he found that lists everything from food and winter clothes to medicine, fuel, and all kind of other useful items, but he's running into a second problem while trying to get all of it. While Bro sits brooding over his lack of cash, a sudden message arrives showing he is now eligible for a massive 170,000 yuan loan right now. That was exactly the lottery ticket he had been waiting for all along. With no one around to pay back debts during the apocalypse, Hanfang frantically tapped on every loan app he could find online, borrowing from everywhere just to stay alive. The scene shifts to Hyona, who is absolutely fed up with the way he treated her today. This stuck-up woman can't stop being upset that her personal life rejected her, which says a lot about her character, especially after she let the guy she once loved get killed in his past. Hona was calling Hanfang a pathetic loser for not having a car and didn't think she'd ever be kind to him again. Just as we were talking about him, the devil himself arrived in a car and gave her a loud honk. Hyona freezes in shock when she realizes the driver is the very guy she was just talking about. Hanfang shows up to chat with her and tells her he just bought the car. After all, since his dad makes a lot of money in America, he naturally sent some cash for her to enjoy while he was busy taking him to the airport. This fact actually cools her down, making her think he turned her down because he had an important job to attend, so she apologizes for asking him out during such a busy time. Just like she usually does, she plays the cute, crying victim while complaining about how mean he was. Hanfang's reaction is wild. He first calls her foolish, but then pulls her close, insisting she's far too important for him to ever leave, while the arrogant girl thinks she won the jackpot and uses his feelings to suggest a movie and a nice dinner together. Just as she's talking, our boy interrupts with "Peace thee out" and immediately starts packing his bags, complaining about how busy he is with everything he needs to take back. Even Hona is completely baffled, wondering why he suddenly bought so many things. Hanfang plays it cool and claims he did it just because he wanted to, then raises her expectations by mentioning he also got a gift for Hyona. Feeling light and full of joy, she turns to head home, hoping to look at it again later. As she walked away, Hyona wore a look of pure satisfaction, convinced she had crushed her opponent. But she doesn't realize our boy is wearing the same sneer on his face, and they are both playing games to trick each other. It turns out he's never going to share his secret stash of supplies because it's the only way he survives this awful apocalypse. And when the world finally crumbles into darkness, he plans to take revenge on the bastard who killed both him and Hona. He admits that this time he's actually looking forward to the apocalypse, and I know exactly what's about to happen when Hona eats. It's going to be incredibly satisfying. Only 2 weeks left until the end of the world, when a thick blanket of heavy snow will bury the entire planet and freeze the air to minus 20 degrees Celsius. For the next month, the cold will slowly creep down to minus 70 degrees, burying the world in snow so deep that stepping outside becomes impossible, which is why he has quietly packed his apartment with hidden supplies to keep everyone safe. For the trickiest supplies, he'll sneak them away in the dead of night when nobody is watching. With the apocalypse looming and power supplies getting shaky, fuel becomes essential, so Hanfeng bought enough to last a whole year just to keep everything running smoothly. Facing his next challenge, he realizes the heating systems are dead and hires a crew to reinforce his home against the coming apocalypse. Finally, he has set up a secret room to hold all his supplies and gear so no one will ever suspect him, giving him free access to whatever he needs whenever he wants. By the time he finished getting ready, July 14th had already arrived, leaving just one day until the heat became too much to bear. After finishing all his preparations, his last task is to get to know his superpower. To survive the deadly winter apocalypse without freezing, even Hanfeng knows his supplies just won't cut it. And this is where his plant-based powers shine as a beacon of hope. Before him lay the soybeans he had grown with his own power, and now the moment for the taste test had finally arrived. The problem is he hasn't found out what makes his power work, but Hanfeng decides to take a spoonful anyway, hoping the food is safe to eat despite his fear. After cleaning half the plate without any trouble, it's clear these beans are harmless, proving he can safely cook and eat food with this power. But the real puzzle is figuring out just what makes his hand glow like that. After trying it out on many things, he has only used his power on soybeans so far. So, he checks his fridge, hoping to find some other veggies to try them out. Soon the bright midday gives way to the evening. Hanfeng, feeling sleepy and weak, opens his eyes and wonders if he just fainted. He clutches a piece of broccoli in his hand, while the kitchen walls are covered in vegetable splatters. The only thing holding him back right now is that his own super strength is draining him so much he can't think straight. While chewing on the same soybeans, he noted how he'd finally figured out a new part of his power. Then we'll look at what happened right before he fainted. He sent a bunch of things down to try out his new power and then used it on a different group of plants. Here's the weird thing. Some of the plants just didn't react at all. But for others, those seeds blossomed into full plants, just like the soybeans he had tested. There's also a third group, some of which exploded right in his hand, and nobody knows why they did that. Hanfeng also found black, coal-like bits left behind after the explosion. The best part is that we can save these same substances to use later for warmth. With that, he finally figured out how to stay warm when the harsh world around him turned cold. Thrilled, he focused on sharpening his abilities, and though he stumbled at first, Hanfeng's intense focus made the magic shine brightly, finally giving him exactly what he wanted. The guy ran out of energy and crashed to the floor. Back in the present, he looks baffled by his own powers since some plants obey him while others don't. It's tough to tell what will work and what won't. Even so, he has learned that the true trigger lies within his mind, so he now meditates on a dreamlike world where he becomes one with nature. It's a feeling that links his mind and body together. In the end, his wild ideas turn into big wins. The moment Hanfeng opened his eyes, he grinned as his glowing green hand proved his power is tied directly to his mind. To push his skills to the limit, he tests his ability on a pile of meat just to be sure. The poor guy is crushed to learn his plan fails on meat, which would force him to eat only plants forever. He strained his eyes and begged his powers to wake up, but nothing happened. That made him doubt his own mind and remember his meditation trick, which paints the world in either red or green, and all he's tried so far is the green one. This time, he shuts his eyes tight, praying his mind can finally reach his second power. To his horror, his hand began to glow red and warp the meat into a nasty, spiky lump that looked nothing like food anymore. Disgusted by what he sees, he throws the meat down and creeps closer to inspect it, pinching and grabbing it while wondering if his red glow actually cooked the meat or if it just happened to heat things up on its own. As he looks at his hand again, he realizes the truth. The meat isn't cooked, it's actually falling apart. Realizing this, he discovers that the green light speeds up evolution while the red one slows it so much it causes things to fall apart. So he tries to mix them by pressing his hands together with the meat. A flash of yellow appears, and the meat grows into a huge slab. But he is confused because the soybeans he held are gone, so he wonders if they somehow merged with the meat. Hanfeng is blown away by the incredible results of his own power, and after taking a closer look, he realizes the meat he found is the freshest he has ever seen. His heart is racing because he can't wait to give it one final shot. But his luck turns sour when Bro fails so badly that everything goes black, leaving him slamming his hands on the floor in frustration until he finally calms down and has plenty of time to test his powers. He feels great about finding so many new things in just one day. If only he can ever master this power completely. He dreams of turning into Superman and standing at the very top of the world. But then the fool realizes that food isn't enough to save his life. Now he needs a weapon to protect himself from other people. Just as he starts to head out for a weapon, he suddenly realizes the apocalypse has already begun. Just like before, the whole world is getting buried in crazy amounts of snow, even though it's July. He steps outside anyway, convinced he must grab a gun before the air freezes to minus 45 degrees, even though buying one is forbidden there. Lost in his own thoughts, he notices a guy with broccoli-styled hair shouting that he's Lao Wang's younger brother, using the same trick of claiming his sibling has more money to win a petty fight. Hanfang instantly recognizes this guy from somewhere, judging by his terrible fashion sense. The funniest part is how everyone decided to call him Homeless Joe. We're talking about Les, or Homeless Joe, who lives in the same neighborhood and is a well-connected contractor who knows everyone around. People stop him to ask what's going on, and he acts like he's the busiest guy on the block, just to tell them he's too busy working on his projects with his big brother. That bro has no job, yet he's constantly complaining on his phone while pretending to manage a massive $1 million project just to pass the time. Hanfang looks at the guy and wonders if this idiot can help him get the weapon he needs. He waves at Homeless Joe and acts like they're old friends, but the truth is, he doesn't really know him at all. Hanfang plays the part of Shirao Han, using the other man's pride to act like they're old friends who should know each other, and the homeless fool falls for the trick, apologizing for forgetting them while he's got so much work to do. Hanfang glances around, steps quickly toward the punk, and explains everything that has happened. Once he finishes talking, Homeless Joe is stunned and wonders why anyone would need a gun. With Hanfang speechless and no excuse ready, the blonde punk warns him that guns are illegal and dangerous, making it clear that even with connections to get weapons, a homeless person like Joe isn't looking to get involved in trouble. Hanfang explains his side, saying he needs it to protect himself because some people are still angry at him. He tells a made-up tale about bumping into a man on his commute, where the other guy carelessly spat in his face while riding his bike. Of course, it made him furious, so he stepped right up to the clown and started pounding him in front of everyone. After he left the humiliated man to his own devices, that man swore revenge and promised to come back with his friends. The very next day, Bro got completely wrecked by the whole gang, who made fun of him and left him in ruins from head to toe. After that, Beast attacked him. He's been looking for a way to defend himself. Luckily, Homeless Joe feels for his story and insists that spitting on someone goes too far and deserves a punishment. Hanfang starts to wonder if this guy is completely missing the point of his own rant. Even though things look grim, Homeless Joe steps up like a guardian angel, promising to handle everything by calling his big brother and setting things right, which leaves Hanfang feeling relieved that his luck is finally turning. Homeless Joe suggests they steal the boss's car, since the fancy ride is at the shop right now. Hanfang is fine with that, proving to Homeless Joe that he has a vehicle ready for them to work with. While driving, Homeless Joe is amazed and asks how much the car cost, only to hear it was $700,000, a price he thinks is a steal. The bro is taking photos like he's the next big social media star. It's hilarious because he acts like the SUV belongs to him. Talking about that big brother, his gang of friends are hanging out by the fire, joking about how crazy the weather is acting. Hanfang's car pulls up and Homeless Joe jumps out, acting all smug while his friends can't believe he bought his own SUV, even claiming he paid $700,000 for it himself. Hanfang feels that Homeless Joe is acting very bold by speaking out in front of the car's owner. The punk drags Hanfang before his boss, a tattooed gang leader who is furious to see his own brother and instantly kicks the blonde punk out the door. Homeless Joe puts all the pressure on Hanfang, telling him that his friend wants to buy a gun. The gang leader is shocked at first and then gives our boy a scary look. Hanfang is shaking with fear, while the boss is just irritated that they traveled all this way looking for a cheap gun instead of something cool. The boss ordered his lackey to grab a pistol and toss it to Hanfang in exchange for $6,000. But our boy isn't feeling like wasting time with those tiny pistol toys. No, he's here, ready to go full John Wick style, and asking for a long gun with a scope. The boss grows furious at the kid's boldness for asking for a sniper rifle, scolding him for acting like he owns the place and reminding him that he has no right to bargain or browse around. That's where Homeless Joe steps up to share another tale, this one about Hanfang's wife who cheated on him 3 times. By the end of our tale, the boss exploded in a fit of rage over our hero. Those absurd tales look like they were written just for a movie. Finally, the boss says yes to the sniper rifle, but warns that it will take a few days, leaving Hanfang happy that his wish is being heard. Changzi, the underling, is ordered to set up a semi-auto for him too. The boss finally relented and tossed a free gun in as a gift for the guy. Hanfang is absolutely stunned when he sees him handing over the handgun for free. Our boy, feeling grateful, quietly shares a key secret with the gang. He jokes that he's pals with the government and warns that the weather is only going to get worse, so we need to grab supplies fast before they run out. This time, Han Feng's serious look makes his advice feel even more important. The boss agreed to listen to his advice, and that's how the meeting ended. Returning home, Homeless Joe shared how he handled that meeting like a skilled mediator and was glad his brother was in a good mood. Han Feng is so grateful he wants to buy cigarettes for Homeless Joe, who pretends to be noble at first but soon gives in to the offer by asking for 8 cartons, as if it were no big deal. While he rants, Han Feng ignores him to check his apocalypse list, confident that once he solves his food issue, everything else is ready. Just as he's busy with his plans, Bro bumps right into Homeless Joe and takes a terrible tumble, leaving Han Feng's leg in ruins and shaking with pain, while Homeless Joe is totally confused by the sudden crash. Our boy is pretty sure he broke his leg, so he gives Joe the keys to drive them to the hospital. She stares at him in silence, then shamefully admits she doesn't even have a driver's license. So he has to try the old-fashioned way, but when the punk tries to push him down and the scene gets so sad that Han Feng calls a taxi to escape the pain, it all feels like too much to take. The next scene takes us straight to the hospital. Head nurse Jian works the night shift in the reception area, watching as the snow piles up heavier and heavier with every passing hour. Suddenly, a frantic call brings her rushing to the hall because they are desperately short on staff. By the way, our boy really did end up breaking his leg, and now he's sitting in the hospital, devastated by the news, while he waits an hour for his meds before he can go home. He laid out a perfect plan, only for one tiny, unpredictable slip to send it all crashing down. Brother Lee waves goodbye, saying he's got a mountain of deals to handle before he can even step out of his busy schedule. Well, that puts Han Feng right back at the starting line. He's alone with his injured leg while the hospital overflows with patients fleeing the crazy weather and scary heat, proving things will get much worse outside soon. Han Feng is standing in a line that's way too long, waiting impatiently for his medicine. He sees the pretty head nurse in the distance checking a patient's pulse, and since she's so helpful around the hospital, the doctors and nurses are glad to use her. Seeing her makes our boy Han Feng lose his breath and wonder how anyone could be a head nurse at such a young age. She treats every patient with incredible kindness and looks adorable from head to toe. So he's singing again, but this time for a different woman. As he watches her, an elderly man asks for help, and she rushes over to find him complaining of sudden back pain, only for Jin to gently remind them that they are short on staff, and it will take a while to help him. The shady old man's real plan is to trick the head nurse, so he secretly hides a camera under her skirt to snap a picture while she's busy helping, and she promises to send him an x-ray later when things calm down. But the old geyser isn't done yet. He switches the screen to full PDF view and pulls her close. The inexperienced head nurse remains clueless, promising that a real doctor will arrive any minute to check on the patient. But here's the problem. The old geyser doubles down and grabs a field of the hospital's finest bakery. Just as the boy tries to take another step, he throws his crutch right into the old man's face, knocking him down and causing the head nurse to rush over, while Han Feng apologizes for not knowing how to use the crutch properly. Han Feng pretends to look at the old man's phone just as the old geyser screams at him to stop. Our boy sees that picture in his gallery and gets really mad. He can't believe that jerk took a photo of the nurse and even touched her, so he immediately threatens to call security and throw the guy in a cell just to get one less troublemaker hanging around the hospital. Han Feng refuses to give back the phone, promising instead to expose the creep on social media if this happens again. Stuck with no choice but to flee in frustration, the old man with his back pain suddenly sprints away so fast it looks like he's breaking the speed of light. Even the head nurse is speechless at how fast he ran, while Han Feng realizes that some people are truly this naive. He hands her the photo to show how the man was bad from the start, and while Han Feng is fine with her dealing with it, he even gives her the phone to call the police. Jean is overjoyed to grab the device, but a worrying thought hits her. Didn't Han Feng break his ankle? That thought hits him hard, reminding him he just broke his leg and only kept going on pure adrenaline. So the full pain crashes over him and he screams. After a short while, she hurriedly wrapped his wounds in bandages. Han Feng is finally feeling much less pain, so the head nurse is so thankful she promises never to let anyone else take advantage of her again. But as she speaks, our boy's foot is being forced deep into her 2 separate personalities. Han Feng thinks this girl won't learn anytime soon. They call Jinan back for her work, so she stumbles away and tells our boy to come back in a week for a real checkup. Han Feng realizes with a heavy heart that in just 7 days, he will be forever separated from her. He walks away, carrying that heavy, sad thought in his mind. The next day, the weather turns ugly. News is popping up everywhere about sudden, heavy drops in temperature. Even Dubai and Egypt are getting heavy snow, a thing never seen before, so experts from 46 countries have rushed together to meet and figure out what's really happening. These experts say the harsh cold won't last long and will soon break through in just a few days. Still, people are told to stay inside and follow the rules to stay comfortable, while Han Fong sits calm in his modified room with a heater that gives endless warmth and nothing to fear, even though the news says the disaster will pass, but he knows it's just a lie to control us, making him feel like a fool for believing it the first time. But now things are different, because he is fully ready with his supplies and heating system running perfectly. For now, he has nothing left to worry about, since the group chat is going wild as the team complains about the freezing cold and their inability to stay warm. What makes this group chat so wild is that one anonymous person just blurts out that the Ice Age apocalypse is about to start, and that the snowstorm is actually coming from deep inside the Earth itself. The messages leave Han Feng in shock, because no one is supposed to know this secret yet. Hang's mind instantly flags this mysterious stranger as someone to watch out for, especially since he is the main character who alone knows that the world is ending. Now that the happy residents look like a mob on a leash because of this snowstorm, the board group chat transforms into a theme park where everyone logs in as tiny chibi avatars to make tagging the property management less boring. The angry residents are furious because the snow blocking their exit is ruining their grocery runs, and since they paid a huge sum for such terrible service, they're demanding a serious talk with the property manager to make their money worth it. While the property managers are panicking and offering hollow apologies that only fuel the residents' anger and desire for refunds, our friend Hang Fun watches from the sidelines, annoyed at their wasted energy, yet knowing that even without magic to fix the storm, some people still refuse to give up hope. One resident, named Janu, realizes he can't fight the blizzard alone and thinks it's smarter for everyone to help each other out instead of making things worse. Since nature's fury is beyond any property manager's power, taking it out on them is just a waste of time. Not everyone in the lobby shares John's laid-back vibe, and these short-sighted, unruly folks decide to trash him instead of helping, just because he's taking a stand against the property management. Jean tries to say he's just being realistic and not taking sides, but the hungry crowd won't listen and demands the snow be cleared so they can finally get their groceries. Hin tries to reason with the clueless crowd, warning them that just because the snow has gone outside doesn't mean the roads are safe, so he suggests they walk to the grocery store instead, since it's much easier to clear a footpath than a whole road. Meanwhile, Hang Fun's face falls as he spots the guy who has been preaching everywhere like a fake guru. The way our boy stares at him, it's obvious their past hasn't been kind. Suddenly, a guy who hates bad stuff and looks pretty fed up jumps right into the conversation. He gets straight to work, telling everyone who wants to eat that they must go outside and clear the roads first. Otherwise, all that whispering won't melt the snow. Then he logs off, and another guy steps up, eager to go outside and help clean up the mess. This rough-talking thug looks like someone Hang Fong knows well. Slowly, the townspeople began to join the crew and start clearing the streets. Even the delicate cuties are ready to get their hands dirty for this noble cause. Then comes Hyona, the unforgettable volunteer who's stepping up to help. Hang Fong can't figure out why a girl like her would agree to join, but it turns out her volunteering was just a trick to draw in the guys who hate her beauty, so they'd never let her get close to them. Just as we feared, she snatched the moment to grab all the credit and dumped her duties on everyone else, which is exactly what you'd expect from someone so selfish. As Hang Fong logs out, his frustrated face shows that this woman never fails to ruin his mood. She's typing a message to him right now. Why do you ask? Well, she knows this desperate man will do anything he's told, so she wants him to bring her food. She adds a bonus shot of her bare legs, thick thighs, and scant clothing, aiming right at the boy's soul. Hang gives her a perfect score of 10 out of 10 for her amazing effort in seducing him with almost no clothes, even though it was freezing cold outside. With his leg broken and unable to chase the treasure, he decides to throw out a teasing remark just to make her skin crawl. And sure enough, his words work, leaving her so furious she wants to stomp right on him. With the blizzard's freezing chill already biting below 20 degrees on this third day, the warm glow of central heating still fought against the destruction that was just beginning to unfold. The internet kept everyone distracted, so bored teenager Hang Fong just scrolled through TikTok, watching those busta ladies in shorts. Though he's honestly just bored after only 2 days of this so-called apocalypse, he can't help but wonder how much loneliness can really change a man. His broken leg keeps him stuck and in pain, so, with no choice but to wait months to heal, he dives straight into hours of videos instead. That's when he stumbles upon an inspiring news report about a guy who somehow heals himself after falling from the 15th floor, wrecking his organs and shattering his bones. But not long after, the man began to heal himself all by himself. Thinking about his supernatural powers reminded Hang Fong that he had tricks up his sleeve, so he activated the glowing green light over his hand to mend his broken bone. But the green energy died down without achieving anything, so he tried again, only to fail once more. With nothing but failure ahead, he admitted defeat, slumped back onto the couch, and drifted into sleep after hours of endless scrolling. In his dream, he rode a giant goat wearing strange clothes, followed by a wild swarm of them soaring through the air with their heads flapping wildly, until the whole group suddenly slammed on the brakes and threw him off. As Hang Fong felt his leg throb from the fall, a goat started licking it, which made him push the animal away in disgust, only for the goat to retaliate by wrapping its incredibly long tongue around his leg and suddenly jerking him straight up into the sky. The spot on his leg where the tongue is wrapped around begins to heal right away. Hang Fong jerked awake in a cold sweat, so shaken by that weird dream, he was sweating all the way to his knees. Suddenly, he sees his leg glowing green as it fixes itself. Soon after, he slowly takes off his bandages and very carefully puts his foot down on the ground. It was a shock when the pain vanished, as if that green glow had quietly healed him once he drifted off. To prove his crazy idea right, he grabs a sharp knife and tries to hurt himself, hoping to start the healing all over again. His hand shakes as he hesitantly cuts his finger to test his new power. Let's head back outside, where the crowd of grumpy neighbors is finally using their strength to clear the path to the main gate. All the credit goes to Jang, whose rousing speech brought everyone together and got them moving. Jang then gives his special thanks to an old man who had worked harder than anyone else. The old man then praises the twins for grinding just as hard. Then everyone's favorite injured nurse, Jing Ian, stumbles through the snowy mess, but the twins see her trouble and step in to pull her up. After that, the twins decided to get back to work to clear the path further and told her to call if she needed more help. Jang sees the snow coming down harder and tells everyone to rush their grocery run so they can get back right away. When talking about supplies, the old man remembers something he only mentions because Jang pushed him to say it. The old man shares a rumor about someone new spotted moving in with a small truck, but Jang just shrugs it off as completely normal. But then the old man drops a surprising twist. He noticed the stranger had gas tanks and a fireplace packed with him, which definitely wasn't normal moving stuff and looked like someone prepping hard to survive the winter. Before they have time to think about it, the twins come back with an update. Suddenly, a guy pops out of nowhere, clearly listening to the old man's tale and itching to know who this man is preparing to survive the winter. But this curious guy soon gets hit with a snowball from Lu Yin, who wants him to stop slacking and get back to work. Zhang steps in to end the fight and orders everyone to move out since the main path is now clear. Nurse Jin can't wait to go shopping. The old man turns to Jang, asking if the new arrival already knows a huge blizzard is coming. Jang pauses for a moment before carefully sidestepping the question. He insists the blizzard will pass quickly, so there's no reason to fear. If the storm keeps raging, they're lucky to have a neighbor who has enough supplies to help everyone get through it, which is actually a good thing. As the snowstorm grows fiercer and forces everyone to rush toward the store, our lazy friend Hang Fong stirs in his warm apartment, just as a knock at the door breaks his nap and a familiar voice calls his name. When he opens the door, he finds the homeless Joe standing there with the very special items his friend had asked for. This promised gift from Boss Lu arrived thanks to Brother Lee, who had stocked up on supplies, so he didn't have to run through the city like everyone else, and Han Fong was truly grateful for his help in this terrible weather. Brother Lee shared some wild rumors about last night, where an unknown figure managed to empty a whole supermarket in the Eastern District just as Boss Lu's gang arrived, leaving them baffled by how anyone could clear such a huge place in one night. There was no doubt in Brother Lee's words, and Han Fong finally realized that something stranger than his old life was happening, proving he wasn't the only one with superpowers. For a split second, his thoughts were pulled away by his brother Lee, who urged him to dress warmer and stay safe. After saying his goodbyes and walking away, our hero was finally alone to think things over. He kept trying to make sense of last night's strange events. All he could think of was that some superpowered hero from a comic book must have hidden all those supplies away in a secret pocket dimension. The only thing left was to wonder if people with such powers could really live in this world. And the answer was easy to see. If he had superpowers, then someone else could have them too. Finding this disturbing, Han Fong knew he couldn't waste a moment and had to thoroughly check his superpowers to find ways to fight others. So he opened his diary to review what he knew about how his power reacted with different foods. With its help, he could quickly grow them, make them bigger, and even fry them, though the taste was awful, and he later learned that there were limits to how well it worked on different things. For instance, soybeans only had a 10% chance of taking root, while meat was even harder to grow, and Han Fong kept wondering why nature worked so strangely. In a flash, the soybean in his hand burst open under a strange force, filling the air with a foul green mist. Instead of a normal plant, our hero held a stinky rock in his hand. He was getting annoyed by the high failure rate and decided to practice his power harder to use it better. After all, nothing beats practice when learning a new skill, so he worked late into the night until he finally succeeded and held a fresh, living soybean plant with pods in his hands. That big win didn't come easily to him. He was sweating so hard he was acting like a walking heater for his apartment. But that was the cost he paid to learn the tricks that would help him win more often. He learned that green light energy isn't steady, so he must shine it for different times on each product based on how much nutrition it gives. If you don't guess how long to cook it, you'll end up with a burnt, stinky stone, so you need to know the perfect cooking time for each product. This reminds me of Hanfong, a popular music and dance game from 10 years ago where you had to press the right buttons at the right beat. It was also possible to compare the energy's value to directions like up, down, right, and left, ensuring the energy fed into the object was correct every second until a critical point was reached and the process could be stopped. If you do it right, you'll see every soybean turn into a thriving plant and reap the rewards of your hard work. After mastering plants, Hanfeng started experimenting with meat, but he quickly realized that meat was completely different from vegetables. If you messed up during the process, the meat would turn into a gross, black mess. But the rules for turning the meat stayed pretty much the same. First, we had to figure out how much power the meat needed, and though everything looked like it was on track, there was a big problem waiting to break our plan. The chicken leg blew apart just like the others before it, spilling a nasty black mess all over. It looked like Hanfeng would learn to handle meat much slower than plants, for again and again his chicken legs burst apart while he tried. It felt like he'd never stop failing until his hero snapped, screaming in despair and cursing his impossible ability. Even as the snow piled up and the air grew freezing cold, the hero refused to quit, leaving his determined efforts all over the kitchen. And then came the moment of truth, the final chicken leg. Energy surged in every direction, flashing red and green as it moved up, down, left, and right. It felt like a frustratingly hard minigame to him, where every wrong move forced a restart. But this time Hanfeng finally succeeded and watched the chicken leg grow into a gigantic size. Our hero snorted with disdain, called it worth it, and then collapsed happily and exhausted onto the floor. He had finally figured out how to make meat from scratch. Outside, the weather turns worse every day, and the news says today, July 17th, is the third straight day of a snow disaster sweeping the whole country, leaving people to face a rare event that happens only once every few thousand years while the authorities work hard to keep everyone safe and fed. Hanfeng woke up the next day hearing such news. Hanfeng had heard these same empty warnings and promises about the snow stopping everything before, knowing that supplies would come soon and everyone just had to wait. But he wasn't surprised because he remembered hearing all of this in his past life. Just as he thought he was safe, his phone buzzed with a message, and then it started getting buried under a flood of new ones. Hanfeng instantly spotted his own neighbors causing a fresh uproar and couldn't resist jumping into the chaos. With a deafening clamor, had everyone arguing over the morning news, with some hoping for rescue, while others resigned themselves to saving themselves. One avatar from the crowd asked the gullible person if they truly believed the news. Old Uncle Lou stared at the TV with deep doubt, convinced that if the government really controlled everything, rescue crews would have been there by now, yet old friends whispered that they were secretly gathering tanks and armor trucks in the capital city instead. They're likely getting ready for the war that's about to start. After hearing that a real war with an unknown enemy might happen, a cold silence fell over the group chat of nervous survivors. Then everyone rushed to ask Uncle Lou if he was telling the truth, fearing they were doomed if he was right, while Hanfeng looked on with excitement because he had once lived through this war before. Zhang cut through the chaos to insist that if Uncle Lou was right, they had to start taking steps right now to keep everyone alive. Seeing that some neighbors had run out of supplies, and with help from the government still unsure, he suggested getting together to aid those in need. He urged everyone with extra supplies to share some, and Mr. Zhang proved it by promising to give away half of his own stash to anyone who needed it. The other owners whispered quickly about what was being proposed. One guy completely agreed with Mr. Zhang's plan since everyone was just trying to survive the crisis, so he promised to give what he could and even pulled Lee Hyona into it. She knew that crazy Wu Kuan-Yu was trying to embarrass her in front of everyone just because she turned him down before. Lee Hyona played the humble girl who ran out of supplies and apologized, only for most of her fans to instantly jump up and defend her as a witch. That small chaos nearly ruined their plan to come together, leaving them unable to even help one another. Soon, people were so touched by Mr. Zhang's passionate speech that they started sending in food, clothes, medicine, and everything else they needed. Mr. Zhang thanked everyone who offered help, so he decided to pick some owners to run things since there were so many people to manage. He would naturally lead the team, which would serve as a temporary emergency group to plan and hand out the donated supplies. Han Fong smirked at the announcement, recognizing the familiar plot from his past life where a temporary committee was just a trick to steal everyone's hard-earned resources. On July 19th, the 5th day of the apocalypse, the cold outside had already plummeted to minus 40 degrees. Finally, the building's central heating stopped working because the frost was so severe. Everyone scrambled for ways to keep warm without the comfort of heaters. Some people managed to start a tiny fire inside their homes, just like in the old timeline, but it was a terrible mess that was only going to get worse. Everyone was an exception except our MC, Han Feng, who was fully stocked with his failed experimental charcoals, perfect for stoking his fireplace. A fizzy iced cola and a delicious slice of strawberry cake sat waiting on the table. Han Feng, just like most of us would be, was ignoring the world to play a single-player video game until a sudden phone call ruined his peace. After pausing his game to take a sip of Coke, he answered the call from the Block 8 leader, who needed extra hands in the basement car park to clear the roads in just 20 minutes. Han Feng held back from swearing at the random guy, knowing these people still didn't get it as the snow kept piling up. Reluctantly, Han Feng leaves his safe home and heads downstairs to the lobby, knowing that falling out with his neighbors would be a mess and that he must keep his secret safe. From the moment they spotted the gate, it was clear the snow had already locked them inside the building. Some volunteers were furious that the paths they had cleared were gone, buried under the deepest snow they had ever seen. The volunteers decided to open the door and saw Han Feng, so they called him over to help get it open. They leaned their entire weight against the door and pushed hard on the count of 3. Much to everyone's surprise, opening the door let a swirling snowstorm rush into the lobby. The storm was so fierce and freezing that no one could stand the cold, and getting too close meant even opening your eyes could hurt. Han Feng bitterly wished he hadn't left his warm couch to brave the freezing cold and hard work, especially since going out in that weather meant you could just as easily die. Luckily, every other volunteer quickly realized that no sane person would ever want to step outside in that freezing cold. Speaking of the guy, he showed up, and the voice Han Feng heard sounded just like him. It was none other than Homeless Joe, also known as Brother Lee, who was roasting everyone for acting like cowards when they needed to stand tall during tough times. The volunteers shivered in their boots and begged Brother Lee to turn back from the deadly snowstorm, but he was built different and didn't care. First, he inhaled the entire cigarette in a single, sharp breath. Brother Lee, pumped up and acting like a madman, plowed straight through the snow with everyone trapped inside his hands. The idiot began chanting like an anime hero, punching the snow so hard it flew everywhere, and kept right on doing it for a while. He even managed to dig a deep hole right in the middle of the huge pile of snow, and then came the silence. After a short while, the only sounds the volunteers could hear were broken calls for help coming from under the snow. The others had to pull the frozen, purple-faced Joe out from under the heavy snow. The volunteers knew they couldn't go out, so they locked the gate. Han Feng sprinted to Brother Lee to check if the foolish gangster was okay. He told everyone to head to the car park first to find the person in charge, so they could plan their next move once the snow stopped falling. The blizzard was so wild that no amount of human effort could fix the mess. Down in the underground car park, things felt a bit calmer. Jang, the real boss behind the scenes, found himself surrounded by the owners again, and after hearing the report from the lobby, he agreed to pause the clearing operation while also announcing that the basement parking lot would now serve as the official spot for all donations and collections. Han Feng kept his head down in the shadows, marking the first time he had ever met the guy named Jang from the group chat. This was the same man who started the fake committee, using his polite and smooth words to trick everyone into thinking they were united and supported. Mr. Zhang noted how the owners' donations had piled up like a massive, soaking rain. Those kind gifts helped people who were struggling, and he felt truly thankful for them. The car park felt upbeat because people felt good about helping each other survive, even though their fake sense of unity was just a trick. Han Feng knew a secret they didn't, so they just had to wait and see, knowing that as the disaster dragged on forever, they'd soon wish they hadn't let go of their supplies. Brother Lee, still shaking from his risky trick, climbed up to say goodbye to Han Feng. Han Feng glanced around the car park and spotted someone who really stood out. It was that airhead nurse from when he broke his leg, looking clumsy in a cute winter onesie as she tried to push a stack of boxes through the crowded committee. Feeling out of her element, she finally bumped into a few of the guys hanging around. She would have hit the floor hard if Han Feng hadn't swooped in to catch her, and while holding her in his box, he asked if the blushing nurse was okay. After she finally opened her eyes, she thanked him for saving her life and soon realized that the man in the hospital was Han Feng. She suddenly realized his leg was badly hurt, meaning he wasn't fit to catch anyone falling. Han Feng realized he'd rushed in without thinking, and now he was scrambling for a way out. He stumbled over his words before admitting that he had always recovered quickly since he was young. All those nervous movements made his act look totally fake. Luckily, the nurse was so thick-headed she didn't catch any lies in his words and actions. She just thought his recovery was amazing. Hanfang stepped forward to help carry her heavy boxes, and even after she tried to push him away, he kept insisting until she finally agreed to let him help. The moment he grabbed the supplies, he was shocked just how heavy they were. They felt strangely heavy, so he asked what was inside, and she told him they were medical supplies she was giving to those who needed them. She also admitted the bags felt a bit heavy, but promised she could easily carry them to the donation spot. So captivated were you by Hanfang's beauty and kindness that you'd happily let him carry a bit more weight, and he would never have complained a single bit. Since she bragged about being tougher than most men, the nurse kept telling her not to push too hard, and when asked if she'd always been strong, she grew guarded and hinted there was a reason behind it. Hearing those mysterious words made Hanfang curious. Yet she felt too awkward to share the story and apologized, admitting something strange had recently happened that she couldn't quite explain. They had walked and talked for quite a while now, yet she still didn't know his name. Hanfang then smiled and told us his name. The angelic nurse, Jin Shu, beamed with such joy at this surprise meeting that it felt like she truly loved having us there. Every time he saw that smile, he couldn't say a word. He almost made it, but Nurse Jin stopped him and asked what he does, and when he honestly said he had no job, we really messed up by letting such a dangerous man slip through our fingers. But thanks to a simple manual trick, an impatient man walked right by, knocked Nurse Jin off her feet, and, as she struggled to stay up, she ended up falling on a Hanfang, the only thing she could grab to steady herself. This also caused her soft breast to suddenly press into Hanfang's arm. With no risen hand, Hanfang simply stood there and soaked up the moment. Nurse Jin quickly stepped back and said sorry, while Hanfang tried to tell her it was fine. That would have been a perfect first meeting if not for Lee Hyona, who shambled over to Hanfang like a hungry zombie, her face gray from the cold and starvation. Like a hungry parasite, the witch lunged at Hanfang and rubbed her chest against his arm, slowly grabbing him to ask about the pink-haired lady and whether she was a friend. Nurse Jin instantly felt awkward, snatched the box of supplies from Hanfang's hands, and hurried away to log her donations without interrupting the friend chatting. Hanfang asked why Hona was down here while he sadly watched Nurse Jin rush toward the donation point, and the witch explained she came to grab supplies because she was worried about Hanfang since he wasn't moving much. He scratched his head and said he was about to text, but she called him a liar since he had just been happily chatting with another woman. Then she asked if he had any extra food left, saying she was nearly out and hoping to share some of Hanfang's. He didn't get angry. Instead, he just smirked, playing his fake shy act. Hanfang claimed he had little food left, but could spare some for those who bothered to reply to his messages. He stepped closer, wrapped his arms around the witch's waist, and asked if she'd let him take her to his place for a few days. The witch stumbled for a moment when her usually shy love turned into a confident stranger. She pushed him away with a smile, telling Hanfang that if he wanted to chat, they could just do it online. Hanfang took that for a hard no and turned around to head home. Just as he tried to run away, the desperate witch caught him and told him to wait, insisting that he had changed a lot and reminding him that she had always taken her feelings very seriously. With puppy eyes so sweet they could melt anyone's heart, Hyona insisted she wasn't just after Hanfang's money and asked for a little more time to prove her feelings were serious. Hanfang watched her performance with a shy flush on his cheeks. Luckily, he checked himself right away because if she hadn't already killed him before, he would have believed her words, but right now all he wanted was to rip the ugly mask right off her face. But the truth about who really controlled the witch still stayed hidden from him. Thinking it over now, he wonders why he should even go find the man when he could just play it cool like before, waiting for Hyona to bring him over, but this time he'll be ready for whatever happens. Knowing she had a steel bat while he held a sniper rifle, he decided to keep things light by joking that he was just teasing her. Now the witch felt a little embarrassed about putting on another acting lesson just for fun. Hanfang promised to wait for her message so he could bring food the next day. Finally, they say their goodbyes, and she even tells him to text her if he ever wants to talk. As the witch stepped out of the car park, a wicked grin slowly spread across her ugly face. She didn't know that Hanfang was the one pulling the strings, not her, as he loved teasing her while playing on Loki. 2 days went by with Hanfang not reaching out to the witch at all. This turned into Lie Hyona blasting him with furious texts about the missing supplies. Hanfang just sat there, letting the salty messages pile up while he enjoyed a sizzling steak and a fizzy drink. It would be perfect to enjoy some delicious food while tormenting the witch who killed you in your past life, especially since you finally figured out how to make blissfully tasty meat that turns the freezing cold outside into the perfect backdrop for a warm meal inside while you sweat in your bathrobe, making you the absolute best. He hadn't just been sitting around doing nothing for the past few days either. He ran many tests to prove that his meat couldn't grow forever like soybeans, but could actually be made in endless amounts, and he already had pounds of it to show for it. Every time he got a full pile of bean sprouts, he'd save half to grow more beans while eating the other half. With the same trick he'd used before, he could turn a half steak and some soybeans into a full one just by shining red and green lights on them. By repeating the trick again and again, he could get endless steak and finally stop worrying about ever eating good food. Even as August 2nd arrived, TV crews kept sending reporters to cover the snowstorm's 19th day, and the tropical Maldive Islands near the equator had finally dropped to a freezing minus 42 degrees. The whole island was swallowed by ice and snow, and the ocean was freezing so fast you could see it happening with your own eyes. It felt like a dream. Experts say the ice grew 5 centimeters deep, and we've seen the same thing happen in other warm places near the equator. Sitting in front of his huge entertainment center, Hanfeng rolled his eyes at the news, knowing the real world outside was much worse than they said, and just as he calmly sipped his daily red wine, a sudden loud noise from outside made his heart jump. Hanfeng rushed to the window and pulled back the curtains to see a building burning in the distance, marking the 7th explosion in just a few days, a scary sign that left him confused about the cause but certain it wasn't good. There were suddenly way more military helicopters buzzing around the city, too. If he had no idea what was going on, neither did any of the other survivors. The chaos outside had everyone camping out in the basement parking lot, bartering away what they had just to get enough food and supplies to survive. Human greed has no bounds. So many neighbors were taking advantage of each other, which led to a lot of fights. At the heart of it all stood Mr. Zhang, still playing his part as the dependable boss who gave free food and supplies to those who had nothing. Today was a special day when Hanfeng stepped into the basement car park with the other survivors, and even though he'd only been out for a few minutes, the biting cold was already making him shiver. Every time he left his house, he wished he hadn't. The only reason he descended was to gather some vital information, for without that purpose, he would never have risked appearing before them again. Before he could reset, he remembered a rebellion sweeping the neighborhood that he believed was linked to the people in the basement, who were still keeping their promise to share resources instead of scamming folks. To figure out what was really happening, Hanfeng decided to act like a detective and dig into the messy chaos of that gathering. The long lines in the collection area showed that many households were struggling with shortages. At the front of the line, a man grumbled that he'd donated huge boxes of supplies, but got hardly anything, even as Mr. Zhang insisted everyone received an equal share. Holding just a canned food item and a sausage, the man tried to demand his donated supplies back, but the committee couldn't really give them to him. With the disaster still raging, Mr. Zhang begged the man to see the bigger picture and promised to pay him back many times over once things calmed down, but a promise of money for an uncertain future meant nothing in the face of the present danger. Finally, the rest of the line turned on the whiny man, yelling at him to stop being so shameless and get moving. Before long, an angry crowd formed around the idea of hating this shameless man who only wanted a few more supplies for his family, and they were completely controlled by the interim committee. Hanfeng knew for sure that the leaders wouldn't share their resources right now, but standing up high to judge those who gave more when the crisis hit was just as shameless. Speaking of shameless, the man, the myth, and the legend finally showed up again in the basement. It was none other than Homeless Joe, who looked far worse than a few days ago, frail and sickly thin. It had been a long time since the Gun brothers last met, and while Lee insisted he was fine, his shivering showed everyone he was actually scared, helpless, and freezing. Brother Lee finally confessed that he was in such tough shape that he could only drink water to silence his hunger, since he had no food left at all. As the donation drive got going, he gave nearly all his supplies to the committee, and by the time the snowstorm finally stopped, his own stash was completely gone. Plus, the food committee gave out way too little to eat, and if Brother Lee had guessed how terrible the storm would be, he'd have hidden more of his own extra supplies. Hanfeng saw a way out for Brother Lee, so he dragged the gangster close and whispered a favor into his ear. Brother Lee stared in shock as little Hanfeng casually offered him just 4 packs of instant noodles and 2 sausages for a simple job, insisting that the fee would be nothing for him. The gangster saw his little brother's offer of food as a perfect excuse to show his kindness, and he was so touched he burst into tears, promising to never forget that act of goodwill. Brother Lee pulled Hanfeng close with a serious but kind look, promising to fix this little problem without any trouble and saying he could just stop at Hanfeng's place later for the food. Before anything else, Brother Lee had to find something to eat, so he joined the line to get a share of food. Hanfeng was thrilled with the perfect deal he'd made, because now he could get all the information he needed from just a few packs of noodles and sausages without ever having come down here again. He felt a bit bad for Lee, but he couldn't bring himself to leave his comfortable spot on the sofa, where he was happily eating good food and playing games instead. Hanfang was about to have a perfect ride in the basement car park until he ran into yet another familiar face. The moment his name was spoken, a palm shot toward his face, and Lee Haya delivered a sharp slap to Hanfang's cheek as his version of hello. Unprepared for the attacks so early on, he stood frozen, unsure how to handle this ridiculous situation. Haya's angry eyes burned with disappointment as she yelled at Hanfang for ignoring her food requests. She shouted loud enough for everyone in the parking lot to hear. Hanfang was so stunned he just stood there, trying to figure out what was going on. The witch he had been teasing gave him a hard slap right in front of everyone. He hadn't even settled her old debts yet, but now she's barging into his home and slapping him for no reason. This was blasphemy at this point, and with his anger surging like a storm, he cursed the fact that Lee Hyona still thought he was just a pathetic wimp anyone could bully. He stayed quiet while she yelled at him for not answering, calling him deaf and mute and demanding he finally speak. Hanfang drew a deep breath as the cold air filled with smoke. Then he pulled off another act, sincerely apologizing to Hyona and claiming his supplies had been stolen. He left his delivery food out for just a moment to grab his keys, but when he came back, the boxes were gone, and Hanfang said he searched for the thief but found no clues. By then, she looked like a junkie begging for her next fix as she asked if he still had any supplies left. He said he had barely enough to last a few days if he ate just one meal each day. When he said there was food left, Hyona's wild face instantly softened into a sweet, blushing smile as she perfectly switched back to her nice girl act. But when she begged Hanfang to share his food and go 2 days without eating so they could survive the disaster together, she seemed completely crazy. Hanfang struggled to stand up to this shameless woman, terrified that she could speak such selfish words without even flinching. In her eyes, he was just a tool to grab when she needed him and nothing more. Hanfang smiled and happily agreed to the plan, letting her keep that hopeful thought in her mind. He acted like a man who would keep his word and share his supplies with the girl, even though she demanded the food right now, while he insisted on delivering it at night to finish packing. She playfully told him she'd be waiting for his message that night, then went home early to wish him well and hope he avoided the sickness spreading around. Hanfang bid her goodbye, but a dark and selfish plan was already forming in his mind. By 8 o'clock at night, Lai Hyona was already pushing Hanfang hard to get some food. She grew so impatient that by 9:30, she was shivering alone and miserable in the lobby hall, only for Hanfang to return to his favorite game of baiting Hyona with messages before ghosting her again. After weeks of freezing in the cold with no one to fix it, the elevator finally gave up and stopped working. So, if she really wanted to cause a scene, she'd have to climb the stairs all the way to Hanfang's apartment. With no other way out, Lee Hyona swallowed her pride and climbed the creepy staircase. Halfway up, she was freezing and tired, making the climb feel like a nightmare, but the supplies were the only thing keeping her going. She was so tired from days of going hungry that climbing the stairs drained every last bit of strength she had left. You have to admit, it was a strange coincidence that the only person willing to climb 16 flights to steal food was the one whose floor had no working emergency lights at all. This only pushed her deeper into the shadows and into the scary stuff. Lee Hyona's heart raced when she heard a spooky noise, so she nervously called out to ask who was there. To answer her question, a black plastic bag dropped straight from the upper floors and was about to smash on her head while Hona stood frozen in shock. The bag thumped down with a loud bang. The emergency lights flickered back on, and a cloud of white dust filled the stairs. The always cheerful Lee Hyona got covered in flour from head to toe after Hanfang claimed he rushed over with supplies only to accidentally drop the bag when the lights went out. As Hyona brushed flower petals and plastic from her hair and coat, she felt truly gross, watching her nasty true self peek through her fake mask. Hanfang felt proud of this sight because he had carefully built this mean prank for her, and it wasn't finished yet. He picked up another plastic bag and told the witch he had packed up all his last supplies just for her. When she took a closer look, she saw that almost everything was rotting and looked more like garbage than food. Hanfang pretended to be silly, scratching his head and joking that he'd worked overtime to keep that stash of leftovers, even the rotting meat, from going to waste. He quickly switched to acting hurt, snatched the plastic bag, and told her to hand it back if she didn't like it. Afraid of going hungry another day, the witch snatched the bag away and insisted she wanted it. Hanfang scanned her from head to toe before shaking his head and laughing at himself. Right before him stood the goddess he had chased so hard all along. She looked like a homeless crackhead stuck outside on a winter night, digging through a trash bag to find something edible in the moldy pile. She snatched the last bag of flour from Hanfang's hand with a greedy grip. Lai Hyona was happily celebrating with just half a bag of flour left. not caring that she had just been covered in it minutes ago. She left without a word. But Han Fong didn't care, since feeding the witch his actual garbage should give her a terrible stomachache for a few days. The rain made it impossible to shower, so she had to keep walking around with sticky flowers clinging to her skin for a while. As Han Fong happily made his way home, a strange chill settled in his heart. He pretended not to see the shadowy figure creeping behind him. Han Fong stayed calm, walked straight to his unit, and stepped out of the stairs, acting like everything was fine. A dark shape trailed behind him a few seconds later. It had to be a person, since the snow boots told us who it was. Han Feng used the element of surprise to hide behind the door and spring at the stranger, following him. He seized the mysterious figure tightly and threw them down hard. Just as he was about to punch the spy, something made Han Feng freeze and his anger fade away. The person chasing him was actually a girl with messy hair, tired eyes, and huge glasses. Han Feng knew there was only one reason she was here so late. She had to be spying on him, and he needed to figure out what she wanted. But all he got back was silence and a blank stare from under her glasses, showing she wasn't much of a talker. She didn't say a word, so Han Feng, surprised by her silence, tried harder to make her speak. He warned that he would rip off her coat right there in the freezing cold unless she spoke. Even that didn't make her talk, so Han Feng grew tired of teasing her and decided to let her go for now. But next time, she might not get away with spying on him like this. Now she had to quit her quiet play and rush home before she froze. Just as our hero was ready to go, he suddenly felt someone grab his sleeve. This quiet girl wasn't letting him leave so easily, even though Han Feng didn't know what she wanted. While she just stared at him in silence, Han Feng warned her to stop looking and even threatened to kick her out if she didn't say what she wanted. Instead of speaking, she pointed with her hand and dragged our hero along, and even the clumsy Han Feng realized he was being led to see something. They walked straight into her room. The inside was shockingly warm and bright, leaving our hero speechless. He glanced around and saw stacks of boxes, some empty and the room full of trash. It was amazing that this girl had so much food weeks after the world ended, making him wonder if she had prepared ahead of time. Han Feng bluntly asked if she knew the ice apocalypse was coming before it started, and surprisingly, she finally answered him. Even though she spoke in riddles, she had actually done the math herself and found a result that predicted a future ice age. She turned out to be the mysterious stranger who had warned everyone about the Ice Age apocalypse before it started. Yet Han Feng, being too stubborn to trust research over reality, didn't believe a single word of it. And he was right, because she had finally shown him the truth behind everything. In her room, the girl kept a wall of screens glowing with live footage from security cameras. And on every single one of them, our hero appeared, doing something completely different in the first clip, like picking his nose while carrying boxes in an elevator. On the second night, a delivery crew brought a dozen gas cans right into his room. On the third day, Brotherly brought him a gun case and the other things too. It turns out Han Feng's first guess about the girl was right. She had been spying on him for a long time. She felt so at ease that she changed her heavy winter clothes right before our hero, simply because her room was too hot for them. Han Feng still blundered and misunderstood, asking why she suddenly undressed, only for her to say it was just hot, while he clearly meant something else entirely. Why is she doing this right in front of him? He ordered her to stop right away and pull her pants back up. After a while, even though he didn't want to, he finally had to take off his coat as well. She held dangerous secrets that kept him trapped until he solved the mystery, and Han Feng finally pieced it together. She was spying on him because his early stocking of supplies before the snow made her suspicious, but luckily her watch wasn't to blackmail him, only to see if he was smart enough to be a worthy partner. Now all that was left was to guess what she meant by working together. She found speaking hard, so the girl chose to just show him everything as they went, letting him figure it out in his own way. Han Feng stared in shock, unable to picture what her body would do next. Sure, she pulled the generator from behind the bed, not to fight, but to ask Han Feng to teach her how to use it, since while she knew all about computers and books, she had never learned the simple skills needed to survive in the wild. After a bit, the generator started humming along smoothly, though we're pretending it's hydrogen-powered and quiet enough to ignore the fact that running it inside a room is a terrible idea. Han Feng wished this would be the last of her asks, but it wasn't the end. Her blue eyes begged for help once more. This time, our hero quickly set up the hot water boiler, so now she has endless hot water thanks to the generator, but Han Feng still told her to be careful and not forget to turn off the tap. Next, she asked for help with the refrigerator, which was a total mess, so our hero had to teach her that raw meat belongs in the freezer to prevent it from spoiling, and that she must keep everything clean to stay healthy, because he wouldn't do all this for her anymore. Han Feng was stunned that she had managed so long without knowing these simple things. even going so far as to teach her how to attach the gas cans to the stove while she carefully watched and repeated his safety steps. Things only got messier after that, as Han Fong had to teach her how to cook and roast food over the fire until, with our hero completely worn out, a delicious dinner was finally ready for her to eat while it was still hot. He stared at his strange new life, wondering how he'd ended up spending every day babysitting an adult child whose friend simply couldn't look after herself anymore. She didn't look embarrassed for a second, even though the food was so good it stole her breath. Han Fong saw everyone was confused, so he awkwardly stepped away and claimed he was just kidding. He was so exhausted from the day that he could only think about snuggling into his warm bed. It turns out he wasn't the only one tired that day, because when he finally looked at the girl, she was already fast asleep with her stomach full of food as a pillow, which made Han Fong laugh since this was the first time he'd ever seen anyone fall asleep while eating, yet he still gently picked her up and carried her to the bed. Who would have guessed he'd spend the whole day teaching a kid? That night, the snow fell harder and the cold grew even deeper. Han Fong woke up to find guests already pressing for his attention. It was the same girl again, arriving with gifts to thank him, and even our hero was shocked by how much she had brought. But once Han Fong carried the boxes away, she stayed right at the door, refusing to budge with that familiar look in her eyes that told him she was about to ask for another favor. She arrived with the generator and begged him to teach her again since she hadn't learned yesterday, forcing Han Fong to start over and eventually realizing she was hopelessly clueless about surviving out there. She was also terribly clueless about what was right and what was wrong. But she refused to quit, so every single day she dragged Han Fong in her room to teach him how to survive. After a while, she finally managed to cook something that looked like a real meal and was actually edible, even though Han Fong thought it was still just a tiny step up from time when dogs wouldn't touch it. But in this frozen world, humans would be lining up for it. After waiting so long, Han Fong finally asked the girl what her name was. She stepped forward and said her name was Jo Shingon. Han Fong still couldn't figure out why she was acting so strange, but he refused to leave her behind while chaos erupted in the basement below, where hungry people were fighting over the last of their food. Chaos fell like rain as people started grabbing supplies from one another, arguing fiercely over who owned what, while the weak collapsed from exhaustion and the strong rushed to take even more, signaling that the quiet days of this community were finally over. Fighting for resources they thought were rightfully theirs, people clashed in a struggle they believed they had won. They fought fiercely to protect the tiny pile of stolen goods they had gathered, turning any attempt to take more into a chaotic frenzy of blind violence. These folks hit and kicked each other so hard their hands and shoes were soaked in blood. While everyone else was rushing toward the end of the world, Mr. Jang stood calm in the middle of the storm. He cranked up the megaphone until the noise stopped the fight, making everyone cover their ears in pain, proving that Bro was using a real sonic attack and acting like a true supervillain. After a few seconds of hearing the grating feedback, Mr. Jang finally spoke to the other survivors, asked if they were tired of fighting, lifted a badly beaten man to show them how foolish it was to risk dying for just a few resources left. But the crowds remained furious because Mr. Jang's new donation plan meant they barely got any noodles, leaving them to starve if they didn't die fighting. Mr. Jang pretended to listen to their complaints about the unfair sharing of resources, then turned back to his people and got straight to business. If they're fighting over something so silly, then maybe they deserve to starve. Jang asked who started all this trouble and told everyone to think hard, but the angry crowd just blamed him. He grabbed a piece of bread and began his magic, helping the crowd remember what was truly happening. Once cheap bread costing just a few dollars is now sold for tens or even hundreds of dollars by those who have plenty. The elite squeezed the poor until they were empty, even tearing a single piece of bread into 10 slivers just to sell it off by the crumb. They cashed in on the disaster to get rich, while the people stuck down in the basement car park had long run out of money and hope. But now they were fighting themselves over the very system that used to keep things running smoothly. While the powerful locked away their food and treasures, raising prices out of greed, ordinary people fought each other just to survive. And yet here were the poor, starving, and fighting to the death, which made Mr. Jang wonder if that was truly fair. Seeing the crowd devouring his words, Mr. Jang called on everyone to stop what they were doing, stand together, and take back the resources that belonged to them all. These hungry and angry citizens began to convince themselves that the news they just heard was true proof that they were being treated unfairly. Why did only the rich enjoy all the good things while everyone else fought just to stay alive and not starve? Jang sat back and watched, smiling as the puzzle pieces clicked together on their own after he'd planted a seed of hatred in the people's minds. The crowd's anger was aimed at the other apartment residents, who felt they were only taking what was rightfully theirs. Watching the violence, chaos, and desperation boil up, Mr. Jang gave a silent smirk. Amidst the growing chaos, you could spot homeless Joe, who also went by the name Brother Lee. Out of everyone, he alone could see right through the madness of that speech as the crowd teetered on the edge of going wild, knowing something huge was about to crash down and that he had to warn Han Feng right away. In Han Feng's room, he was lounging around, pretending to read while snoring, until his phone's ringtone woke him up. He got text from Brother Lee about the trouble starting in the basement car park. With Mr. Young constantly urging them on, the crowd started snatching supplies from everyone, breaking into homes, and prying doors open door by door. Brother Lee told Han Feng to hide and stay safe from the dangerous, armed raiders who were ready to cause harm. He could only pray that homeless Joe would manage to look after himself out there. Han Feng never expected things to go this way, and even though he bought 2 guns, just in case, the thought of pointing them at another person still made him feel a little sick inside. If the people had pulled together that kind of operation and found out his secrets, they would have been so desperate to get him that they would have eaten him down to the bone. And so, he had to get ready for anything that could possibly happen. He grabbed some wires, tools, and a few fire extinguishers from the storage room. He took some stuff and clumsily taped live wires to his doorknob to try to make his door safer. After finishing his shoddy machine, Han Feng slowly unspooled the wire across the floor. Just as his small test was getting underway, the lights suddenly went out. Looking down from high up, it became obvious that every single building in the area had lost its power all at once. Some folks tried to reach management, but they'd lost touch with those people a long time ago. Han Feng knew the snowstorm was getting worse, and everyone was using too much electricity to stay warm, so he figured the power would go out soon anyway. Then, thick snow piled up everywhere, and freezing cold temperatures made it impossible for anyone to clear the paths. After weighing everything, it looks like the blackouts and lost signals might just stick around this time. When folks figured out the power was gone for good, they knew things would only get worse from there. If their panic sparks a rebellion that goes too far, then real hell will break loose. Just 30 minutes before the power cut, the witch Lee Hyona was greedily stuffing noodles into her stomach. Her current benefactor was flexing that he'd once paid 50 times the normal price for supplies, and the poor, with no choice, just shut their mouths and sold. Even though he had plenty of supplies, he only sold 500,000 of them by holding auctions where the poor fought each other just to grab a single crumb. And with that trick, Blondie made a fortune. He ran his hand alongside Lee Hyona's face and asked if she thought she had made the right decision.